Hey guys, subscribe for daily content, and if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks! What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review / knife overview to show you guys. This is the Kunwu Primo, sporting a very interesting blade steel called Vancron, and we're going to talk all about Vancron and what it is and what it isn't right here at the beginning of the video. Thanks so much to Kunwu for sending this in. This knife is available in multiple configurations, including the one you're seeing here. They also have one with a satin blade. They have full DLC blades and frames, textured, non-textured. They even have lefty versions, so I'll have that linked down in the description. It does help my channel when you use those links, but that's entirely up to you. Thanks to my patrons for supporting me. What in the heck is Vancron? Fortunately for us, Laren Thomas actually has a short video on testing this stuff, which, by the way, is made by Bowler. I'm going to link that video down in the description. But I do have some notes here. I kind of condensed it down, but it's definitely worth watching so you can get the full understanding of it. I think Laren does a good job, explaining it to people like me who are just very, very dumb when it comes to metallurgy. This is also a great example. It's a great way to remind veterans of the knife community and newcomers that the vast majority of blade steel compositions are not primarily intended for pocket knives. They have a different primary application, and then we choose to make blades out of this stuff. Sometimes the balance of attributes translates really well to real world use, and sometimes it does not, right? Vancron lands, depending on your perspective, somewhere in between. Kunwu, excuse me, still fighting the throat raspy battle here. Kunwu heat treats this to 63 to 65, which is right there within according to Bowler, like right in the middle of your most optimized range. I guess Laren ran two tests, one at 66 and one at 61. But the idea behind Vancron is that it has really good adhesive wear resistance. I guess galling would be a good example of this. It'd be like two metals rubbing against each other and creating that type of wear, which is probably something that happens in like an industrial setting. But this isn't necessarily something that happens a lot or at all with like a knife, right? It's not a normal like usage scenario. So a lot of what Vancron is good at is kind of lost. It's like you dump a professional football player on the basketball court, right? He's an athlete, but it's the wrong sport. I don't know that that's necessarily the best example, because this still does end up being a decently good combination of elements here. But essentially, this composition creates something called vanadium carbonitrides, which I guess they don't know exactly how it works or why it ends up being so good at resisting adhesive wear. But the theory is that it creates like little lubricating, like self-lubricating elements or something like that. I don't know. You have to watch the video. It's kind of interesting. I just don't completely understand it, right? But it's different from vanadium carbides, which he went on to explain he expected it to do better in terms of edge retention, right? Maybe somewhere around like 10 V, I think is what he was expecting for edge retention. And it didn't, because it doesn't create vanadium carbides. It creates vanadium carbonitrides, which is typical of nitrogen-based compositions, I guess, right? I'm trying to condense this. But yeah, it ends up being like, if you're like, all right, enough with all this, right? We get it. You don't really understand it either. What does it compare to? In Laren's results, he said toughness compares somewhere around CPM 10V, while edge retention is only about as good as something like Vanax or S30V. It is also not a stainless composition. At the end of his video, he goes on to ask the question, is Vancron a bad steel? And he says, no, it just doesn't necessarily have a
an ideal balance, right? There's other blade steel compositions out there that will be more beneficial in terms of balance for the end user, which is literally the case no matter which composition you choose. So yeah, you just have to ask yourself, like, what elements are important to you? Kunwu, like many other companies, likes to use different blade steel compositions simply because so many of us love just using a different blade steel and experiencing a different blade steel, even if it isn't perfectly optimized. We have essentially, nearly perfectly optimized, well-rounded steels, and they are so common now. Your S35VN, your S45VN, I'm not saying these are perfect. I'm saying they will do everything that the average or the most common knife person is going to do with a knife, right? Your magna cuts and things like that, Spy 27, stuff that's designed to be well-rounded and designed as pocket knife steel. We have that stuff, but a lot of it is so common that we get bored with it, and so we intentionally seek out other blade steel compositions just for fun, right? Some people, get a lot of spaghetti in their pants over this for no reason. All they're doing is just chasing down these steels. It's not even perfectly optimized. Yeah, but they also know, like knife people, we know that we're doing that. So in so many ways, every day when I put a pocket knife in my pocket, it is hardly the most optimized type of folding blade I could possibly put in my pocket. So I'm already doing something non-optimized just by choosing the stuff that I normally choose. And then it's further not optimized depending on what steel it is. And I know that, and I'm okay with that. So at the end of the day, it's just like with anything else. Buy what you like and then ignore the rest. And you don't necessarily have to have a reason to enjoy what you want to enjoy. But I felt like it was important to explain what Vancron was and not put it up on this, because it sounds super cool. Vancron! It must be like the newest, the newest steel to rule them all. It sounds super cool, right? But I thought it was important to kind of go over the bullet points of what I understood of what Solarin Thomas was explaining, just so people kind of get a good idea. So anyways, I'm talking so much, I'm turning into Steve-O again. Sorry about that. Let's go ahead and measure this knife. I actually really enjoyed carrying it, not because I got some sort of wild or crazy result with the steel. No, because I just carried and used this knife like any other pocket knife. So for me, it was hard to tell the difference between this and any other, properly heat treated steel that I normally carry. I just like the shape and the look of it, right? I also like how easy it is to manipulate. But anyways, the overall length of the Primo is coming in at almost 8 inches, not quite. It's like 7.9. Blade length is coming in at 3.5. Cutting edge is 3 inches. Let's do some size comparisons. Any custom scales that you find in this section can be found down in the description under Original Goat and Others. So up against the AD 20.5 and the AD 10, you can see here it's pretty big. Even though it's not quite the same overall length as the AD 10, it still has a lot of presence and it has a lot of burliness to it. Not quite as much burliness as this guy. It's a much bigger knife than something like the AD 20.5. How about up against the Spyderco PM2 and the Spyderco Para 3? Very similar in overall size to the PM2, much taller. And then finally up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue. And where are you? Oh, there it is. The Hogue Deca. Okay, so how's the action on this knife? Pivot action is identical to every other Kunwu I've ever handled. It's a very good pivot action. It's being assisted by the amount of material in the blade, meaning that the blade is heavy enough that you're getting fall shut action between the, the quality pivot action of Kunwu knives, but there's just a lot of blade. So really good. Also really good engagement here with the lock bar. It's not cut out below, but there's just so much room in it. There's so much chamfering on each side, or kind of scooped out, right? The main thing I like is that the entirety of this oval, which is really large, is accessible. And I mean, it's really accessible because the blade is so tall. So this is about as organic as you could possibly hope for with this style of like opening hole. It's also very easy to utilize the front flipper. If you like the blade hole and front flipper combination, this is one of the best, especially that Kunwu offers. I think this is my favorite knife to reverse flick that they offer. It is just unbelievably like simple and straightforward and organic. It's like this is an extension of the human hand. It's very, very simple. I like that. You can also very easily kick it out with your thumb, or you can pinch open it and wheel it around, whatever you want to do. The action is great. Carry profile, thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. It's a big boy, right? It's not quite, I mean, it's contoured, so it looks like a huge, massive brick, but these taper down, right, and get thinner at the edges. So it looks huge, but it doesn't necessarily feel huge. It feels huge this way, right? It's very, very comfortable. Let's do carry profile, length, and height up against the PM2 and Para 3. This is a tall object to carry, and it will take up a noticeable amount of room in your pocket. It's not absolutely massive, though. Like the difference between carrying the Primo, and my full titanium AD10, like this feels gigantic compared to this knife. So if you carry this knife around, even with the G10 scales, and you're fine with it, you won't have a problem with this. But if you're used to carrying something like the Para 3, that's going to feel huge, right? Let's go ahead and do a hardware check. I'm going to get out my tools as per usual. My tools are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them right down in the section of my description that talks about the tools I use on this channel. We have a T8 pivot. I think it's a T6 lock bar insert screw, but I don't even know why I checked those. There's no reason to take that out. T8 here, T8 for the pocket clip. Just typical Kunwu doing the right thing. Very simple, very easy to take apart. As long as you have the right tools for the job, you should be good to go. Let's weigh it. There's the scale. Everything is in the right place today. It's a miracle. The weight on this guy, titanium, Vancron, titanium backspacer, titanium pocket clip, Damascus pivot collars on both sides. The weight on this guy is coming in at 5.4 ounces. Actually a little lighter than I thought it was going to be. And probably thanks to some internal milling there. So that's nice. And then let's measure the blade stock thickness, and we'll get into the meat and potatoes here. Pretty straightforward from there, honestly. Your blade stock thickness is coming in at 122 thousandths. So not really all that thick. I'm actually kind of surprised by that, but then looking at it, the blade just gives off this hulking impression, you know? Okay. This does look like meat and potatoes time. This does look like the Ironfly YOLO. I don't think it's exactly the same, but that company's also owned by Kunwu. That's like their budget brand, right? So it's kind of like a premium YOLO. What I love about this is the ergonomic lines. It's incredibly comfortable. I love this pocket clip. This is definitely the best pocket clip that Kunwu does. In and out of the pocket, because of this texturing, if you go with this raindrop texturing, that is going to demolish your pants. So think about that before you pick something like this up. If you're worried about that, get the smooth texturing. If you don't care, if you're like, all my jeans, all my pants are ruined anyway, I don't care. I want the grip. The grip is there with this, right? But that's going to be a downside. You can attach the clip for lefty carry if you want to. And that's why there's no bald spot, because then they'd have to do a bald spot on both sides, and that would look extremely stupid and ugly right here. So I get it. If you're worried about it, just get the smooth one, right? But lock-in and comfort are superb. This is hand melting excellence. It's like squeezing silly putty. It just conforms to the hand. It feels super good. Also love that all the design team behind this, including Sergio, that they all have brains, because the jimping extends out and complements the index finger position exactly the way that you'd want in the event that you're holding the knife like this, which is not going to be all the time. Most of the time you're going to be here, here, you're going to be here, here, stuff like that, right? But it's nice that the jimping is there. Feels nice and locked in and controlled. I think the geometry of this blade is going to allow it to perform the way that you want it to, like the way that most people want it to, despite the fact that Vancron is not absolutely optimized for what, I mean, let's say, you know, like, for example, it sounded like Laren Thomas said steels like 10V are a more optimized balance if stainless properties are not, you know, the thing that's needed the most. It's a much better balance of, it's a much better ratio of potential edge retention to toughness, right? Okay, but that's also not perfectly optimized for everybody. And at the same time, while it will probably, well, it almost certainly cut longer than Vancron, the shape of this blade, like the geometry of the blade, is just like it's like an enlarged utility blade. So it's still going to cut really, really well, right? But I think the average person could spend a really long time figuring out exactly which blade steel composition and which geometry is perfectly optimized for the tasks that they are the most likely to do day to day for some extended period of time. You could do that, right? And figure it out. The vast majority of people just carry what they like to carry and use what they like to use. And as long as the blade lasts for an amount of time that they expect it to, and it's not like falling apart, right? They're not having to sharpen it all the time. It's not overly chippy or anything like that. Then they're going to go, yeah, this is good, right? So for some people, this is going to matter and some people aren't. My point is that this is a blade geometry that's going to do really well for EDC stuff. Almost no matter what it's made out of. Obviously, it'll perform a little better if it's made out of something that's going to hold an edge longer. But and again, this doesn't mean that Vancron has bad edge retention. Like I said, somewhere around VanX and S30V, that's pretty good. It's not like it's not triple B 15V, but it's still really, really good, right? So it's going to hold an edge. It does get reasonably thin down here. Great for your draw cuts and pull cuts. It's just kind of a big, bulky utility blade, right? Whenever I say that, there's always one person that's like, well, why don't you just buy a utility knife? Yeah, you can do that. Everybody here has probably carried one and used one at some point, and they have their place, right? But considering this is an enthusiast knife channel, a lot of the reason that people are looking at pocket knives like these is not because they're confused about how much utility they're getting dollar for dollar in these more expensive knives. They know. They just want something cool, and a utility knife is boring, right? That's what it boils down to. Let's just be real about it, you know? Excuse me. But anyways, yeah, the blade, it feels good. It's like it's a blade that makes opening packages super fun, right? Doing your draw cuts, things like that makes it super fun. And on top of that, being able to manipulate it super easily. The fact that it is so comfortable to hang on to. And it looks and feels premium and aggressive at the same time. It's just cool. It's a complete package for a lot of people. And being able to say that you have a blade made out of Vancron sounds cool, right? Even though we all have learned that it's not necessarily anything ultra special, it still sounds cool and will perform just fine. It's still a super steel, if you're wondering. It definitely is. It's just not the most superiest of the super steels. Its power level is decent, but not incredible. Does that make sense? I would never know. Using this knife and all of my other super steel knives, I would never personally know because I don't use things incredibly hard, right? I'm a design reviewer. But I do think that the different steel compositions are fun in the same way that I think Pokemon cards are fun, right? But anyways, we have a titanium backspacer, nothing crazy going on there. We have the typical modular slots for the Kunwu pocket clips. So there's like a bajillion, well, not a bajillion. I think there's like 3 or 4 clips that'll fit these, but it's already got the right one on there, in my opinion. Left to right hand carry. We have a stop pin located in its traditional position back here. Knife runs on bearings. I think I mentioned that. No blade play up, down, left to right, typical of Kunwu. No lock stick, no pivot lash. Very, very smooth and consistent in here, with a very nice clicky detent that's appropriate for the deployment systems. And then we have no off-centering. I'm sorry, we have a centered blade is the way that I should say that, with no detent lash. In the end, just the Linkin Park song is now playing in my head. At the end of all this is another incredibly well-built and incredibly cool Kunwu knife that's got a unique steel that won't be, not a unique steel, it's just a less often used steel that won't be perfect for everybody, but no steel is, you know, if you want the most well-rounded steel out there, get yourself a 6364 Magna Cut blade. There you go, the end. You know, that's easy because they're everywhere. So if that's what you're looking for, then you can do that. But this is an exotic or semi-exotic blade, however you want to say that. It's an exotic bowler composition. We have contoured and in this case textured titanium with Damascus accents, right? A lot of material. It's a big knife. You have a full titanium clip, full titanium backspacer. It has a lot of the elements that I expect as we approach and sometimes go over that $300 mark. But the cool thing is that the base price of this knife, if you go smooth and satin, if you go smooth for the frame, satin for the blade, is $280. Yes, the DLC one gets up there, but that's for DLC. The base price of this is $280, which I think is very fair. Very fair, especially considering Vancron is not cheap. Like, as far as blade steels go, this stuff is expensive. And again, the Vancron it's not a bad composition. It's not like Bowler was like, oops, we made something that's not optimized for pocket knives. No, they didn't make it for pocket knives. We just were like, can we make a blade and put it on a knife? Bowler's like, yeah, sure, I guess. Right? This is for some sort of industrial application, and it makes a pretty good blade, right? And it sounds cool. And like nobody else is using it for production knives. I think it was, even Laren had like a custom knife made out of it, right? So, yeah, again, toughness somewhere around 10V, unless I missed some part of what Laren said was confusing me. Edge retention somewhere around Van X and S30V, and it is not stainless, like nowhere near stainless. So you might need the DLC. Or if you clean your blade off a lot, or you're not in an environment where, moisture is an issue, it may not matter, right? But hopefully you've got all the information. And again, I urge you to watch Laren's video for 2 reasons. Number 1, he's a metallurgist and I'm not, right? Number 2, it has full context. Number 3, I might have screwed something up. So I'll link his video down in the description so that you can learn more about this blade steel if you want to. This is a cool knife, though, and generally speaking, it is a recommendable knife. I think it's a good value. It's a good size. It feels really organic. Might be a little bit bulky for some people, but at this price point, it definitely feels really, really good. And I kind of like the Vancron. I'm like, ooh, neat, fun, different steel, right? Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.